Just after midnight on June 17th, 1939, a crowd of people began to form outside of this unremarkable building in Versailles, which is a city in France. The atmosphere in this crowd was electric. They all knew why they were there, but even still, there was a lot of nervous anticipation. Between 1 and 2 a.m., the doors of this unremarkable building opened up, and a group of men dressed in the same dark uniforms came out and didn't say a word to the crowd, and the crowd immediately went silent and began to back away from them. And this group of men, they walked right out in front of this building, and they had lumber and they had tools with them, and they began constructing this kind of strange wooden structure. And so by about 3 a.m., this structure was built, and they placed this large basket next to the structure. At this point, the crowd had become quite sizable outside of this building, and they were growing kind of restless. At 4:50 a.m., those doors swung open, and standing in the threshold was 31-year-old Eugene Weidman, who was a convicted serial killer. His arms were tied behind his back, and the collar of his white shirt had been tucked down inside because they needed his neck to be free and clear because he was about to be beheaded. So the two guards on either side of Eugene, they pulled him forward out towards the crowd so the executioners behind him, who were dressed all in black, could filter out and take up positions alongside the guillotine, which is that wooden structure that had been built earlier in the morning. The crowd went wild. They were shrieking and howling and laughing and pointing and booing and just generally being completely rambunctious and totally bloodthirsty. Eugene kept his head down. He did not want to look at the crowd, and so eventually the two guards turned him and walked him directly towards the base of the guillotine. The executioners, they grabbed him and slid him forward so he was on his stomach on top of this wooden platform, the guillotine, and they slid him forward until his head poked through this opening at the very far end. His neck was positioned right under this huge blade that was dangling right above him, and his head was positioned over a metal bucket on the ground, which he would be looking directly at. One of the executioners pulled a lever, the blade came soaring down, and it removed his head. His head fell into the bin, and then the executioners and the prison guards, they gathered up Eugene's body parts and went right back inside of the building, which was a prison. At this point, the crowd was cheering and going wild, and they ran up and began dabbing their scarves and their handkerchiefs in Eugene's blood, which was on the ground, as a sort of souvenir. All of this had been captured on film. And so later that day, and for the next couple of days, the headlines all over France were about this bloodthirsty crowd that was cheering as this man was beheaded, and it just overall made France look really, really bad. And so French leaders decided that from that point forward, they could no longer do any more public executions. The guillotine would continue to get used for decades beyond this point, but it was all behind closed doors. Here are some of the more notable pictures that were used in the media from Eugene Weidman's execution.